Turning back now to our coverage of the impeachment inquiry into President Trump, the whistleblower whose revelations sparked the investigation is making an offer to House Republicans. According to the whistleblower's lawyer, his client is open to answering written questions submitted by Republicans.
Now, the move would allow Republicans to ask the whistleblower questions without having to go through House Democrats. But this comes as the president steps up his attacks on the whistleblower and calls for their identity to be revealed. For more on this, CBS News intelligence and national security reporter Olivia Gazis joins us now from Washington. So why this route? Why written questions?
Right. So what the whistleblower's legal team has argued from the beginning is that this individual has gone through all of the proper channels to make appropriate disclosures and that those were ultimately deemed urgent and credible by the Inspector General. That process entitles this person to certain protections. Moreover, they're saying that the identity of the whistleblower is moot because the substance of the complaint has been borne out in so much other testimony and sort of facts that have come to light. So now in this apparent effort to assuage Republicans in particular, the legal team is saying, hey, you can ask our client anything you want, provided it's not related to his identity. You don't have to go through the Democrats. It will be a direct channel. It just needs to be a written channel that won't compromise our client's identity. It's a means of being responsive to the Republicans' demands and concerns, but unfortunately, it does already look like it's being dismissed as insufficient.
Well, given that the president of the United States himself submitted questions to the Mueller investigators when they were investigating the Russian attempt to influence the 2016 election, why would this not be acceptable? What are you hearing from your sources about that?
I'm not sure that there's a sort of logical or an acknowledgement of the hypocrisy that this would appear to involve. It's just the appearances of the offer being accepted don't look good so far. The House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said yesterday on Face the Nation that he believes the whistleblower needs to testify in an open hearing. That's been echoed by Representative Jim Jordan, who's a close ally of the president. And yes, of course, as you said, the president himself has been tweeting to this effect this morning and before too. This argument that the substance of the complaint has been consistently corroborated by witness after witness, including in writing by all of the opening statements that have been released, it's just fallen on deaf ears when it comes to the Republicans. They have repeatedly stressed that for a proceeding this serious that undermines nothing less than the office of the presidency, the person just needs to come forward publicly.
Well, part of the Republicans' complaint is that, well, you can't cross-examine, you can't redirect, you can't do that sort of thing when it's in written form. So that's their issue with written form. But, the former National Security Advisor John Bolton and Energy Secretary Rick Perry, they're both scheduled to testify this week. What role do they play when it comes to the relationship between the president and Ukraine, and what is the likelihood of either man showing up?
Yeah, scheduled, but certainly far from certain to testify. We know both of them to have taken part in meetings that are of particular interest to impeachment investigators. And of course, they would both represent some of the closest direct links to the president of any of the witnesses that we know of that have been called to date. Rick Perry, of course, attended the Ukrainian president's inauguration last May. We know him to have supported President Trump connecting with Zelensky directly, which we know the president was reluctant to do at first. In John Bolton's case, we know from other witnesses he was present at this contentious July 10th meeting where the EU ambassador Gordon Sondland outlined what looked like a pressure campaign. Bolton is known to have opposed those efforts, but there are all these unanswered questions as to, what did he do about it? Did he confront the president? Did he confront Rudy Giuliani? Anyone else? Did he resign in part because of it? So because they would both be in a position to supply this important sort of firsthand knowledge about pivotal moments, and the committees lack it, they would be important witnesses. But, the track record for witnesses this week has been pretty poor. Rick Perry has already said in somewhat colorful language that he was not going to comply. Bolton, even though he's a former official now, is looking unlikely. His deputy, Charles Kupperman, filed a case recently that essentially asks a judge to rule as to whether he should comply with the demands of the executive branch or the legislative branch. Since those steps, the next steps in that judgment have been pushed to December 10th, there's absolutely no expectation that Bolton would either get ahead of that ruling or otherwise, rush to appear before congressional investigators that I'm not sure he's a big fan of.
All right. And finally, Olivia, I guess Democrats are expected to release transcripts of these closed-door interviews. We're hearing as soon as this week. What are you hearing as far as the public finally getting their eyes on these?
Well, so the chairman, the House Intelligence Committee chairman, Adam Schiff, has said they could be released as soon as this week. As far as a response from the White House, I'm not sure that we've heard anything like a coherent legal strategy emerge, but it is the case that Republicans have been calling for this for weeks, ever since the testimony of Kurt Volker in early October. So they've been really pressing for that release. They've been consistently decrying what they say is a lack of transparency in the process, claiming that none of the witnesses has bolstered the Democrats' case against the president. Now that release looks imminent, what we did see this morning is a sort of offensive shot fired by the president, who in a tweet said, Adam Schiff is going to somehow change the words that were said in order to suit the Democrats' purposes. He said that Republicans should give their own transcripts of the interviews out to the public. These depositions were, of course, transcribed by one official stenographer. There's not, multiple, political versions of them. So, if that's the White House strategy, it's hard to see how it's going to be successful, other than from a, PR perspective of bolstering support from his already strong base.
All right, Olivia, thank you.
Thanks, Olivia.
Thanks.